Alan Bennett's brilliant play, The Madness of George III, had its premiere in London in 1992, 200 years after the reign of England's truly mad king. It will not take 200 years for a play about the madness of Donald Trump to be written. Probably more than 200 of those plays will be written in the next 200 years, and the Trump playwrights will have a much easier time of it than Alan Bennett had, because they will have the video and the tweets of all of the madness. The tweets saying Trump is King of Israel, the second coming of God. The video of Trump talking about wanting to buy Greenland. The video of Trump talking about himself as the chosen one. The video of Trump saying he fell in love with the murderous North Korean dictator. The Trump and Kim Jong-un love affair will be set to music in some versions of the madness of Donald Trump. In others, it will be played with the deadly darkness of Shakespeare's Richard III. And if we're lucky, future audiences watching all of the plays about the madness of Donald Trump will be watching them the way I watched the madness of George III in 1992. They will be watching something that feels like it happened a long time ago in a crazy moment in history that could never come again. If we're lucky, when future audiences are looking back at it, the madness of Donald Trump will look like a 4-year explosion in our politics and culture that came and went within the space of 2 presidential elections. And all of the polling that has come out this week strongly supports the possibility that the Trump presidency will crash into democracy on the next election night, and this time lose. Donald Trump has an approval rating tonight, which, if it holds, makes it impossible for him to be reelected. The Associated Press shows 62% disapprove of Donald Trump's job performance, with 36% approving. And there is an even worse number in a Monmouth poll. Only 39% of voters support Donald Trump's reelection. 57% say it's time for someone new. That could not be more clear. Those numbers have to change dramatically and quickly for Donald Trump to have a reasonable chance to win the next election. And there is nothing on the political horizon that is likely to improve those numbers. Donald Trump ran for president claiming he would revive manufacturing in America when manufacturing was already doing reasonably well. Today, the Washington Post reports that thanks to Donald Trump's trade war that he is losing, the U.S. manufacturing purchases index fell to 49.9 in August, from 50.4 in July. That is the first time that that particular closely watched indicator has fallen below 50 since the first year of the Obama presidency. American automobile manufacturers have overruled Donald Trump's misguided softening of emission standards for their fleets and have made a deal with the state of California for stricter regulation than the Trump administration wants nationally. The state of California is, of course, the largest and most important automobile market in the world. And so no auto manufacturers are going to build a car that cannot be sold in California, something Donald Trump did not realize about automobile manufacturing until he learned it the hard way. The Trump tariffs are becoming increasingly expensive to American consumers and could easily cost Americans $1,000 a year per person. The Trump budget deficit is now $1 trillion a year and going up. Donald Trump talked about the national debt and the deficit almost every day of his presidential campaign. But now that he's increased the national debt by trillions of dollars, he no longer says a word about it. That's one piece of ammunition he won't have in his reelection campaign. And then there is Donald Trump's historic status as the 4th president in history to face the possibility of real impeachment proceedings in the House of Representatives. And today, 3 more Democratic members of the House of Representatives came out in support of impeachment. Illinois Democrat Brad Schneider issued a written statement saying, after months of relentless stonewalling by the Trump administration, I believe it is necessary to evaluate the various congressional investigations of the president into a formal impeachment inquiry as the only way to ensure the American people have a comprehensive understanding of the facts uncovered by Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation and hold the president accountable for his actions. The Special Counsel made clear that then-candidate Trump and the Trump campaign eagerly welcomed foreign interference in our election. The Special Counsel also lays out that President Trump subsequently acted on numerous occasions to block and obstruct the investigation into what occurred. I previously believed that Congress's oversight and investigative efforts through hearings, subpoenas, and lawsuits were the appropriate vehicle to uncover the truth. Regrettably, it is clear that the administration has little regard for the Constitution and is unwilling to provide any information to Congress and is seeking to play out the clock. The American people deserve to know the truth about what happened, and those who are responsible must be held accountable. An impeachment inquiry is the only way to do so, and I support opening one immediately. Massachusetts Democrat Bill Keating announced his view of impeachment this way.
The Mueller report reveals several instances of obstruction of justice, certainly enough to move forward with an impeachment investigation. Indeed, if that vote were today, I'd support it.
California Democrat Mark Takano said this about impeachment.
Special Counsel Mueller unequivocally concluded that Russia interfered in our elections in 2016 and that President Trump's campaign welcomed the help. And the president committed various acts that amount to obstruction of justice during this investigation in order to prevent it from moving forward. Contrary to what President Trump, Attorney General Barr, and the Trump administration claim, the president was not exonerated of any crimes by Special Counsel Mueller. In fact, in his report, the special counsel laid out his findings for Congress to use as a roadmap to hold the president accountable for obstructing justice.
Leading off our discussion tonight, Rick Wilson, a Republican strategist and a contributor to the Daily Beast. He's the author of Everything Trump Touches Dies. Also with us, Renee Graham, an associate editor and opinion columnist for the Boston Globe. Renee, I want to begin with where the president stands tonight on the eve of his departure tomorrow night for a G7 summit, with the world wondering about the mental health of the president of the United States.
You know, I have to tell you, Lawrence, I can't help but think that if the president were a building, for the sake of public safety, he would be torn down. You know, what we've witnessed these last few days, and these last few days have felt like a month, you know, from the sort of, you know, delusions of grandeur of comparing himself to gods to insulting Jewish voters with this sort of anti-Semitic trope. You know, there's just no limit. But you add to that the one ace in the hole that Trump has always had, the economy. And the fact that the economy is in trouble, I think that's really what's weighing on him. And I think part of it is that he's looking for any distraction he can find to take people's attention away from what's happening with the economy.
Rick Wilson, your assessment of where the president stands as he heads off to the G7.
Look, I think Donald Trump has had a week in which he is proving that this isn't a 87-dimensional chess game. This isn't some masterful strategy of communications or persuasion. This is an old man who is sick and who has problems, who has mental disconnects and who has aphasias and who has moments where he doesn't remember who and where he is, and where the things he says that he thinks sound self-aggrandizing instead just sound like he's absolutely, you know, nuts. And absolutely on the edge of some sort of collapse that will be a shocker to people in our politics, that the master negotiator, President Big Brain, all this stuff, you know, is not a stable genius, in fact, but is something quite the opposite.
Well, let's bring in a professional opinion on this. Dr. Lance Dotus was a professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. He first appeared on this program 30 days into the Trump presidency with another psychiatrist to discuss the mental health of Donald Trump, which to them was already an apparent serious issue for the United States. And those psychiatrists at that time decided they would embrace the principle of the duty to warn and go public with their analysis of the president. Dr. Dotus was on this program last night after this week of observing the president. And let's listen to what he said last night.
I want to make clear that there are a lot of grandiose people. There are a lot of people who are narcissistic. Donald Trump goes way beyond that. There is a fundamental way in which, as I said, he's empty. There's something fundamentally different about him from normal people. It's a psychotic-like state. The more you press him, the more you see how disorganized and empty he is, the more he flies into a disorganized rage.
And Renee, one of the things that's so striking about that is the language is so simple about him being empty and his disorganized rage. And everything that the doctor says is something that anyone can observe in Donald Trump on a daily basis.
I'm not going to diagnose Donald Trump. I'm not going to say that he's having a mental breakdown or any of those sorts of things. What we are seeing, however, is a man who is not used to pressure. I don't get the sense that Donald Trump has really had to deal with a lot of stresses in his life. And now he's got to deal with gun reform, which he's obviously shown no stomach for. He's, dealing with what's happening, this whole situation he created with Greenland, which didn't have to happen in the first place. He's creating all these situations on top of some very real issues he should be dealing with. And Donald Trump is never, he's a man who doesn't react well when he's desperate. And he's desperate. It was great before he was president and he could be on TV and it could be funny and all that. Well, these are real issues at play now. And so we've gone from having a barely functional presidency to a full-blown tantrum.
And Rick,
I just think that's where we are right now.
Yeah, and Rick, it seems to me that this story, this analysis of Donald Trump, definitely connects to the impeachment story, because when a new Democrat every day, and this today 3, come out and say, I am in favor of an impeachment inquiry, it's very hard even for Republicans to say, what? How could you possibly be in favor of that, an impeachment inquiry about this man?
Lawrence, the only easy day for Donald Trump is yesterday. They always get worse. He always causes more trouble than he has to. He always piles one thing onto another of this large case that he's making against himself and that's being made against him by others across the spectrum. He is morally and mentally unfit. He is a man who continues to do things that do nothing to advance the interests of the United States or protect the rights of the American people. And so these things are adding up. And I think Renee's right. There's a pressure building on him, and he feels the economic pressure coming from underneath, the political pressure, the fear of exposure of his taxes and business records, the fear of impeachment. All these things have ground up slowly. And they've made a man, who was already kind of a delicate little flower, who was kind of a guy who lived in a tower his whole life and has never done a hard day's work and never taken a punch in his life. And he is this spoiled little brat who is now in the White House, and he is feeling this pressure growing on him by the minute, and he hates it. He's lashing out. And of course, because he's so, look, the honest truth is Donald Trump is not a super bright man, but he's a very feral kind of player. And he recognizes risks when they're approaching him. He feels risk approaching from all directions right now. That's why he's lashing out at everyone and everything. And that's why these cognitive deficits that are so in our face all the time are coming to the fore, because that pressure on every president has now reached a point with him where it's breaking him.
Renee, to the question of impeachment, any real serious advisor to Donald Trump would have said, as soon as there are any rumblings of impeachment, as soon as there was independent counsel, a special prosecutor investigating him, that he should behave as presidential as possible, behave in a way that at least his behavior would be something that people could respect, that people could see something presidential in. But he has no idea how to do that. And so when, even as the impeachment number gets higher and higher in the House of Representatives, his behavior just gets wilder and wilder.
He has no capacity to behave like an adult, let alone presidential. It's not going to happen. Anyone who was in the White House who might have been able to keep him on a short leash is gone. And even those people failed at it. So who has the president's ear now? Stephen Miller. And, that's what Donald Trump is getting. And Rick, so there's really no chance anything's going to change.
Yeah, and Stephen Miller does not have any ideas about what to do about any shakiness in the economy right now.
No, and this idea that Donald Trump had that he's going to browbeat the Fed into doing what he wants, or that he's going to unilaterally change the tax code. I'm sorry. I know that Constitution is an inconvenience from time to time, but all these things that are fantasy-based in his mind, And the people who are left around him, and Renee's exactly right, they are the Stephen Millers, they're the ones that are the bootlickers, they're the ones that say, you know, his farts smell like honeysuckle. They're the ones who absolutely will never say no to this man. He loves that, no matter how bad it is for the country or for his administration.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.